Shalom. This week in the world, we are reading Parshat Tzav, the second Torah portion in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus. And the truth is, it doesn't take more than just a little bit of honesty and responsibility to admit that the world that we live in which we are reading Parshat Tzav this week, is in a state of tremendous turmoil. There are bright spots. There's a lot of wonderful, beautiful things about our world, obviously. But there are a lot of people, masses of people, that are really just ensnared in the mire, quicksand of moral decay. There's a lot of people just floating with the universe like just so much flotsam and jetsam. There is a tremendous amount of despair. There are people who sink to the lowest lows, and they deal with others with cynical manipulation at best, and terror and murder at worst. In short, it's a mixed up situation. There is a lot of just blurring of the distinction really between man and animal. And you know that one of the major themes of what's happening in the Holy Temple constantly is this process of confrontation, of sifting between the forces of man and animal. And you know what? We can talk about the very pristine, delicate, beautiful, and ethereal things that are going on in the Holy Temple. We can talk about the beautiful strains of the Levitical choir, the music. We can talk about the beautiful aroma of the incense. We can talk about the whole experience of feeling Hashem's presence and perceiving wonders in the Holy Temple. And all of that, of course, is true. But we also can't shy away from the fact that there's a major theme being worked out every day in the Holy Temple, and that is this question, this issue of who we are as people. And you know that when we read these Parshiot, and when we read Parshat Tzav, we're reading a lot about men, the Kohanim, who are officiating in the Holy Temple service, and those that are bringing the offerings to be offered by the Kohanim on the altar in the Holy Temple, men and animals. They seem to be the major actors in the pageantry that we're reading about in Parshat Tzav. And again, brutally honest is what we have to be, looking at the world and seeing that something is terribly wrong with the mix, because there is so much of a terrible blurring of the divine image in which people were created. And that's why we have so much abuse of power, why we have so much inconsideration, why we have so much enslavement, every sort of crime that is perpetrated against humanity by human beings, the cruelty of man to man, is actually coming from a deep place of darkness within a certain part of the human soul, and it's really what we have in common with the animal world, because we also have an animal soul, just like animals, but we have something that the animals don't possess, and that is the godly soul, the divine image. And there's something going on all the time in the Holy Temple wherein there is a process of separation. But it's a direct, fully frontal, visceral confrontation that's going on there. And the key to understanding all of this is back in the first Torah portion of Vayikra, Parshat Vayikra, in the second verse. And in the second verse of that portion we read, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man among you, Adam, ki yakriv mikem korban lashem, when a man among you brings an offering to Hashem from animals, from the cattle or from the flock, shall you bring your offering. So we're setting a tone. Hashem is making it clear from the very beginning. There's no apologies here. There's something very wrong if you think that we have to apologize. Hashem is saying, or if you think that I have to apologize. Are you a man? If you are a man, when a man amongst you realizes what's been going on here and wants to rise above this terrible bedlam of confusion, this is what you have to do. So here in Parshat Tzav, we have a lot of details, a lot of rules regarding the korbanot, korban again, offering, from the root kuf, resh, bet, to draw close, to become involved in a relationship. And so something about bringing the korban is bringing us closer to God. And there are obvious distinctions between people and animals, but yet people object strongly to what's going on in the Holy Temple. And they talk about this ritual, they talk about this cult of the temple, they call it, and they say, what do the animals do? Why do they have to suffer? What kind of God would call for such destruction? Is he some insatiable deity of vengeance and bloodlust who needs to be satisfied? And of course the Torah's answer is no. It's not even about God, really. It's about us. Because if Korban is about drawing closer to God, well, of course, one of the most primary principles of our understanding is that God doesn't change. So if there's something that needs to be adjusted in the equation of our coming closer to God, it's not about him coming closer to us, because he would love to be close to us, he tells us, and he is always close to us. But we, by being confused and by darkening the divine image, we draw away from him. But when we bring the korban lehitkarev, when we bring the offering in order to come closer to him, then something is happening here. But it's not happening to him. He is not happy now and satisfied and mollified and appeased because of an animal being slaughtered. He is satisfied, as it were, nachat ruach that he has, is when he sees that the man that he created in his image is dealing headlong with the situation that he created. And that is the process of our coming closer to God. And in that context, it can be said that what's really being offered on the altar, vicariously, part of the experience, is that side of a man's personality. It's really himself, but the darker side of himself, the animal side of himself, that he's really offering on the altar. This is going on all the time. Yes, there are things happening in the Holy Temple that are far more, if we can say delicate or gentle to describe. But make no mistake about it, a central aspect of the daily service in the Holy Temple is this constant confrontation which brings about a rectification, an ennoblement of the human spirit. And to all those who say, sounds like a big slaughterhouse to me, of course, we all know that the world is a big slaughterhouse today. Because who is making an effort today to dare to admit with the ultimate humility that we as people can become animals, and that it has to stop? There has to be a line drawn where we say, no, this is not the purpose of life. So we have this common denominator with the animal world, the nefesh habahamit, the animal soul. And when we bring the korban, and we have the zvicha, the slaughtering, for the sake of bringing it as an offering, You know what that really is? That is the statement, and again, it's Hashem who's telling us to offer these animals. This is not some assembly line of just, again, an attempt to satisfy some insatiable pagan god that wants to see this in order to allow life to continue. No, this is God giving man an opportunity to elevate his life. The life force within the animal worlds, it's not the same as the life force within a person. And anyone who has a problem with that, I suggest to you, check out their agenda. People who are extremely proactive regarding animals' rights to the extent that they become insensitive to people's rights, check it out carefully. There's something going on there. But when a man brings the offering, and the offering is slaughtered for Hashem's sake, this is like a statement that the life that I led until now, I am negating. And I want to go on from here in a different direction. And the aspects of the avodah, very complicated laws here in these parshiot. The tossing of the blood by the Kohen on the corner of the altar, the burning of the innards, the offering of the fat and the blood, and the eating of a portion of the offering. All of these aspects of the service form a sort of new resolution. If the shechita, the zavicha itself, the slaughtering of the offering, negates sort of the negative side of the life force, which the person inadvertently allowed himself to become involved in, these other aspects of the service, they are a confirmation of the positive. Now, the slaughtering of the animal, that really is a statement that the person is making, that I am no longer living only for myself. In eating a portion of the offering, the idea is that I am able to receive back that which had been offered. And thus the act of eating itself is given a holier meaning. It is elevated. The Torah demands us to give up a life which is wholly physical in order to allow ourselves to rise up to a higher life, to a fuller life. A life that's lived for Hashem, a life that's lived for the purpose of fulfilling His will on earth. And in order to facilitate that, it's necessary for us to realize that we have to, that a purely physical life is only ruled by a selfishness. And that's what has to be given up. And it's very important to note the portion of the offering which is eaten. If we would be slaughtering an offering without eating anything of it, that would be part of this lie, which is perpetuated by those that look at this avodah very superficially and think that this is just some sort of destruction, again, which gratifies or appeases the gods. But when a portion of the offering is also eaten, it's really showing that man has a godly calling. And this is not about some act for God as much as it is an act for us to be able to realign all of the forces within ourselves and to totally adjust ourselves to the reality of who we are striving to be, who we are trying to be all the time. There's a philosophy called materialism. And part of the idea of materialism is that the only thing that exists is matter. Everything is just matter, energy. All things are composed of material, and everything, all phenomena, including consciousness, is just a result of material interaction. And that matter is is the only substance, and that's it. And the Torah is very much against this worldview, and thus, again, the constant confrontation in the sacred environs of the Holy Temple, the confrontation between these various aspects of life force that populate the universe, and that actually are all within a man who is a composite of all of these different forces and who is locked in this struggle. And the struggle is something that he has to go through in order to perfect himself, and the confrontation is something that he has to address. And that's what the Holy Temple is all about. And so we find also in our Parsha, in Parshat Tzav, in addition to the various offerings, Thanksgiving offering, the consecration of the Kohanim, we find the prohibition against eating the fat of an animal and the blood of an animal. And these are things that are also offered on the altar. And in our understanding of this battle that's being waged in the Holy Temple against the view of materialism, that everything is all the same, that there's no difference between man and animal, that all life is the same, in this context we can also understand somewhat on a symbolic level part of the idea of the prohibition against the fat and the blood to be eaten, but only to be offered on the altar. The blood is representative of this active life force of the animal. It's what keeps the animal alive. The fat is what nourishes the body in times of trouble and distress. They both symbolize the animal life. And this is what materialism teaches, that life is life. There's no distinction whatsoever. There's no difference between a man's life and an animal's life. And that part of the lie of the vision of materialism is actually true, that life is life. But it would be a lie for us to believe that man lives an animalistic life and cannot aspire to more than that, and that he has no opportunity to overcome the materialistic life or to sanctify it, and that he's destined to live the same life as an animal. And thus, we bring both of these components of the life of an animal to the altar, of the blood and the fat of an ox, or a lamb, or a goat, specifically because of our identification with that part of the animal force inside of us. But when we bring these as part of the korban, the offering, whose very root is the idea of drawing close, when we bring this as part of the korban to the altar, those things which we are prohibited to eat, this is another form of distinction and differentiation between the life force of a man and the life force of an animal, because we have the opportunity to elevate our lives and to sanctify them to God. And that is the process that's really taking place in this constant arena of direct confrontation and the healing process of the ennoblement of the human spirit, which is so lacking and so obviously missing from the world today. And when the offering, when we're told that it is lechaper al nafshotechem, that it facilitates and affords the opportunity for an atonement for your soul, it's precisely because what we are bringing to the altar, we realize, is also within us. And the error of our way and the propensity that we may have, the inclination that we may have to spiral downwards into the terrible abyss of the mixed up confusion between humanity and the animal world, which is so prevalent in the world today. This is our opportunity for atonement, the refinement, the ennoblement, the elevation of the human spirit, which heretofore has been locked in this struggle and sometimes loses in the Holy Temple, God gives us, according to his master plan for the universe, in that sacred space which brings about the tikkun for the whole world, as it were the gate of Eden, that place gives us the opportunity to rise above and to become human beings again.